Hi, everyone. Welcome to A New View. I'm Shira, and I'm here with Juji, Lee, and Kim. We are four friends, speakers, and professionals from different cultures, backgrounds, and age groups coming together to offer healing and inspiration. I recently shared a great passage by Adam Grant with all of you, if you recall, and it goes like this. Withholding feedback is choosing comfort over growth. Staying silent deprives people of the opportunity to learn. If you're worried about hurting their feelings, it's a sign you haven't earned their trust. In healthy relationships, honesty is an expression of care. Wow. Today, we're going to explore the gift of honest feedback. So which do you think is harder, giving honest feedback or getting it?
I guess I'll go first. I feel like I'm not going to say never, but I have a much easier time giving honest feedback because I feel like I've created a way to make it about a shared experience. But I feel like what's really difficult about getting honest feedback is that in that moment, it does hurt. It can really sting and make you question like your value as a human being. But what I've come to realize about getting honest feedback is that it's really the only way to grow. And it's the only way to really be close to people. And I was going to use an example of something that somebody said to me in the past in this episode, which is that my personality tends to like take over in certain situations. And when I first got that feedback from someone, it was devastating. I mean, like cry for 4 days straight, devastating. Because when they said that to me, sort of off the cuff, I like reverse engineered all of the situations that had gone horribly wrong in my life. And it made me have to take responsibility and not be able to blame the other person for that at all. And yesterday, I am staying with a friend in California. She sort of directed my attention to something that I did in a conversation that was in line with that, like taking over and not really listening and being present or holding space for that other person. And, you know, she put up this boundary of like, that's not how like I energetically want this space to feel. This is like a very receptive space and you weren't respecting that. And it hurt in that moment because of the previous explanation for why things hadn't worked out in the past. But what I so appreciated about it was letting me check myself, apologize in that moment, and then remember that I'm still growing and that it's like progress, not perfection, and that I didn't like ruin this relationship with this like heavy duty energy of mine because I am aware of it. It's not like I don't know how clunky it can be. And even though I let it hurt me in that moment, it moved through so much faster this time, which feels like so much growth that I got to experience in that moment. And I feel like the reason why feedback in general is considered to be like painful or bad is because we don't like to experience pain. Like it's an avoidance of pain, whereas pain is like just a necessary part of life. You can experience it now, you can experience it later. It really doesn't matter. It's almost better to like rip the Band-Aid off and get it over with, really. And then we had a perfectly lovely day together. You know, it was like, okay, we moved through that situation. Like, let's move forward with a clean slate. And I felt like that was an incredibly mature interaction, to be honest.
Yeah. Speaking of pain, I feel like sometimes feedback or giving feedback, and I had a recent situation where I gave someone my feedback, a close friend of mine, and I was actually in pain before I gave the feedback because of some just disappointment that I felt. So this was my experience. I felt some disappointment. This friend was not there for me for something, and so I was feeling pained, and I felt like it was my duty and my and need. It was a real deep desire to give that feedback to this friend, to kind of maybe in my eyes, to open up, her own eyes and view on just how I was feeling. And it wasn't taken well initially. It just wasn't. So there was a little more pain there. The pain escalated a little bit, but it ended up in us agreeing to disagree. I still felt very good about giving my feedback in a very empathetic way, in a very gentle, empathetic way. And it's a close enough friend where I didn't feel like I needed necessarily to ask the permission to give feedback. Although I think that's very, very important when giving feedback to people. It's very often so key to say, hey, are you open to getting some feedback right now? And, but sometimes that also can trigger a feeling in somebody of like, this is going to be bad, or this is going to be negative. And people kind of don't like that either. But, having a conversation, talking it out, and so we at least had the ability to do that from both of our ends. We gave it some time to marinate. We spoke a few days after that. And now, just like you, Juji, where you received some feedback and I gave feedback, like everything feels so much better now. We cleared the air. It was a cleansing. It was a cleansing of sorts this time around with the feedback. So very, very crucial. And it is, I think, ideal, obviously, when somebody can either take the feedback, think about it, get back to you, or take the feedback right away, because in many cases they don't, and it can turn out not to the best, not the best result can come out of it.
This reminds me so much of the boundaries episode we did last week.
Yeah.
Just the aspect of it of doing it for yourself, for your own growth versus for someone else. I find that where I've really grown with getting feedback from people, I used to get defensive, definitely interrupt at times. And something that you both just mentioned with your examples is that you didn't come to like the future conversations or seeing that person or talking to that person with this now uncomfort, awkward space. You're not moving forward in that way. And I think that's really important, to just take the time you need when you're receiving it to really just let it, like, give yourself that time to digest it. Because some people need more time than others. But I think in order to, have a healthy relationship, it's super important to digest it, let them know, you heard it. Over time with friends, I mean, Lee, there was once I don't know if it was a feedback or just pretty much expressing something that upset you that I had done that I didn't even realize. But I remember just feeling like, even though it hurt because it wasn't intentional, I felt, I don't know, almost like proud of myself for taking it and giving myself the time to see it from your point of view, and then having this like now new awareness of it and apologize for it and own it and be responsible for it. Like I felt like, wow, I'm a better person for her sharing that and for me learning that about myself. So I feel like I'm standing in a different place because of not just that one conversation, but other feedback I've gotten throughout my life, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also with feedback, it's not necessarily something that if you're giving feedback that the person necessarily did wrong. Sometimes it could just be like, hey, this made me feel this way. So there's not always like an apology that you're looking for necessarily, because it's not about making the other person wrong, but just sharing, and that's a powerful thing too. You got to be really vulnerable, I think, and again, it's another practice like all of these things that we discuss are in order to be able to do that. And I'm proud that I've been able to do that more and more in my adult life.
Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
Just one last thing to piggyback on that, Lee. I realize now too, well, not realize, I just am more grateful now in my life for when I do get feedback, me giving feedback, because that's hard, that's challenging, that's not the most comfortable thing to do. I really am grateful when I get feedback, because now I have this new perception of it where I'm like, wow, that wasn't easy for them to say that to me. I don't know, they could have planned for that, they could have written out a script, they could have practiced that, they might have been thinking stories in their head about how I would take that. I see how it could be challenging for them to deliver that for not only their own growth, but for mine too. So I appreciate that process.
Yeah. And I think I'm finding it more and more with friends like yourselves. People are so open to it and so much into personal growth and development. And it's so easy to do it with certain people who immediately are very receptive and are open to feedback. And with others, it could be a whole nother ball game,
Yeah, well, first of all, we all know that we love the expression "stay curious, not furious." So when you're curious for feedback and you're open to it, then I'm saying being on the receiving end of the feedback, not necessarily giving it to someone else. But when you're open to feedback, it really allows you to just shift course. But you also have to know or take it from whom it comes, right? So sometimes people have given me feedback, whether it's in a nice way or not a nice way, and I sort of like sit with it. I like kind of let my body, am I hearing something in my body's immediately like freezing up? Like, no, that's not true. Sometimes you just gotta go, all right, they said the thing, like my sister used to say to me when I was sort of in the throes of my marriage not being great, and me covering up and everything's fine. And my sister would say things to me like, sometimes you don't seem real. You seem like you're just sort of going through the motions. And I'm like, in my head, I'm going, what are you talking about? Like, no, I'm just, I'm doing fine. I would convince myself that I was doing fine. But then as the layers of the onion were peeling away and I realized that I really wasn't fine, I realized that she was just trying to gently sort of show me and tell me like, what, there's something going on with you. Like, I can't pinpoint it, but don't you feel like there's a wall between us? Or don't you feel like that you're resistant to some of the things that I'm pointing out to you? And so slowly over time, that's the other thing we have to remember about all of this, the boundaries and the feedback. It's just a process, it's an evolving process. And I love what Adam Grant said about how, showing or giving in healthy relationships, honesty is an expression of care. And it's like, she cares about me. She cares about me. And I wasn't ready to hear it. I just wasn't. And so allowing yourself all of it, the resistance, maybe it's starting to peek through a little, maybe there is a germ of truth to that. Why am I so resistant to that? Like asking ourselves powerful questions. Why am I so resistant to this? And then at some point, if you stay curious enough, somehow the feedback will eventually make sense if it's supposed to penetrate your armor.
I feel like, sorry, go ahead, Kim.
No, go ahead.
I heard somebody say recently that if something that somebody says to you or something that you see from somebody else like really triggers you, then like as a person who is wanting to develop and grow, like start pulling at the thread of why that's triggering you. Like if something feels really resistant in your body, it's trying to tell you something. It's trying to teach you that what you resist persists. Wow, we're like quoting all over the place today. But what feels true about that trigger is when you pull the thread and it starts like unraveling certain like visions that you have of yourself, and then suddenly those visions of yourself are like kind of crumbling because it's unsustainable living inauthentically. I mean, people do it sometimes for their whole lives, but we're talking here about growth and personal development and even spirituality. You know, it's like, who am I in this world if this is how I'm making somebody else feel? Like denying them their feelings and trying to protect my like fragile little ego is not what I personally feel is like presenting my most authentic self. And so to be vulnerable and accept that we are not perfect human beings. I know, crazy. It's crazy. We're not perfect.
Our minds tend to veer to the negative so quickly. So if somebody did, let's just say it, because usually I remember you and I once did a workshop and we got like tons of feedback from everyone in the audience. And we were sifting through the pages one at a time. And I'd say 99 out of 100 people said like amazing things about your performance and your workshop and everything. And there was like one where the guy, I don't know what he said, but he said something not positive. And like days later, I remember you texted me and you were like, is it, or maybe it was the next day, I don't know, but you were just like, I have to admit to you that like, I'm still thinking about what that guy said on that. Meanwhile, there's like 99 like people just praising you. But I mean, I do that in my life all the time where my own husband can say so many beautiful things about me, but then when he's giving me feedback on something that maybe doesn't make him feel good or doesn't like when I do, so I don't know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm like laser focused on that. And then it makes me feel bad. You know, I feel bad. I feel bad,
Yeah.
make myself feel bad. And, you know, so it's like also just having that awareness that, okay, there's a lot of really other amazing things. And that one thing, like you said, is being pointed, is being shown to us from a messenger that's been planted to help us grow and help us, you know, just grow more. But there was something I wanted to share with you guys, something that made me realize that when giving feedback, to always be kind. I'm sure we've all been given feedback in our lives where people did not approach it in a kind way. And Shira, you were saying earlier, it's not what you say, it's the way you say it. Mm-hmm. Hands down, when giving feedback, that is key. Coming from just a really nurturing place, I find changes everything. It can be the whole reason why somebody takes it well versus not getting defensive or whatever. But when I was young, I think I was like 18, or 20, I was in college and I got like an internship while I was in college for the Montel Williams show. Do you guys remember that show?
Oh yeah, Montel, yes.
Montel Williams, yeah. So one day, maybe it was my Long Island accent, I don't know. But one day I was talking to a producer and I said, I never pronounced the word ask. I never pronounced that word. It came out X. That's how it just came out of my mouth. And that took a lot of practice actually for me. And this producer, I was in the bathroom and she was in there. And as I came out of the stall, in a very it was just outright nasty way, she said, I just want to let you know that like, it's a pet peeve around here for you to not pronounce the word ask. She was like, you know, this is the way you said it. And the executive producer is just going to like, think you're stupid. Like she just came across in the worst for a 20-year-old young, insecure girl. So I probably lost sleep over that for years. I don't know. I focused on the way I said it. I avoided saying that word probably for a year. I wouldn't say it. I'd find ways around it because I was so scared of not saying it right. and looking bad. Anyway, fast forward 40 years. 40, I don't know, maybe that's 30?
20.
20?
You're not 70.
40. That happened when I was 5. I am so grateful because that was such a huge she was a huge teacher for me, how not to give feedback. And then when I went on in my TV career, I went on to have countless interns, and I was so good. Everyone loved me as their supervisor because I was so kind to them and I treated them as an equal, never spoke down to them, gave them feedback all the time in a very kind way. Like it was almost like I just was like, I will never talk to anybody like that in my whole life. And it really taught me that.
Yeah. And
That
you
is-
know how you said that your 20-year-old self was so hurt because you were so sensitive. I feel that that can happen to a 40, 50, 60-year-old the same way. Because when we're bullied like that, we're sensitive beings. We're sensitive beings. And all it takes is that one. Like Juji, you
That's
said about,
constructive. That's not a constructive piece of feedback.
that's right.
Not at all.
That's right.
And
Wait,
I hate that it was followed up with, and everybody thinks the same thing. Like, really, you're speaking for the entire organization when you say you don't like the way I pronounce.
That's
That's-
called gaslighting, by the
Right.
way.
And that is when I feel like it's important to check yourself, to be like, how is that coming off? Are they just having a bad day? This,
Right.
that, and the other thing is very different than when a loved one comes to you and they're like, you know what?
So wait, I actually have to follow up Kim's story because that exact same thing happened to me in reverse. And I had such an opportunity. So we had a young intern. This was a couple of jobs ago. It was an ad agency. And this adorable girl was working for us. And she kept saying the word asked. I asked them a question like that. And I was just like, and she real, she went to University of Pennsylvania. Like she was just like very smart girl. And in my head, I'm going, I really should say something to her. I just should. And I was like, but how do I say it? And so I remembered that a friend of mine from college also was told that they were mispronouncing it. And she said, all you have to do is write the letters A-S-T on a piece of paper and tell her to pronounce that. How do you pronounce that? Because people have a hard time saying asked. I asked him a question. But if you say A-S-T, I asked him a question. Anyway, I brought it to her attention and I was just like, listen, I have something to tell you. Don't take this the wrong way, but I know that other people I've told this to have found it helpful. And and I just gave it a little preface. I said, are you open to it? And she's like, sure, what? What are you talking about? And I told her this little trick, this little tip about saying AST. And she was so grateful. She's like, other people have told me, but they didn't say it to me so nicely, so I didn't really care. But the way she's like, that's so helpful, that little tip that you gave me. And she said something to me like months later, like after the internship was over, she like remembered to say something to me again about how helpful that was. So it is always how you say it.
You left that conversation feeling empowered and feeling loved and feeling relieved. I felt feeling stupid and a lot of other things.
You had the opposite approach. They approached you in exactly an opposite way that left you feeling the way you did, which is terrible.
Listen, it's something we don't teach enough how to do. Like, we teach people communication, we teach young kids how to read and write and vocabulary and grammar, but we don't teach them how to use the words in helpful, effective ways like this. So,
and we don't teach how to provide feedback in a kind way. That's not something that's taught either.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we're starting to teach it now. Here we go.
Well, this is a great place to wrap up. We hope you enjoyed our conversation as much as we did, because we just love talking to each other and to you. If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel. Be sure to let us know if you have any topic requests or questions by commenting below. We'll see you soon. Thank you for watching and stay safe, everyone.